I love a room full of Marines. It's really my favorite thing. And this time I'm here on Fancy Friday, which is so exciting. You look so nice. Is that not what you, that's what it's called, in case you did not know, it is Fancy Friday. So first thing, I'd like to thank you guys so much for your time today. I know it really isn't your choice to be here, but thank you for being here. And I also want to thank you for making the decision to serve our country. You guys are all mostly new Marines. And I have some pictures I'd like to use during my speech. I'm going to show you the first one. You should laugh. It's funny. You should laugh. I know I'm making fun of you, but it's still really funny, and you should laugh. My name is Amanda Watley, and in 2004, I married a handsome young Marine. We have been married for 13 years. We have 4 children. David is 10, Katie is 8, Jacob is 6, and Ellie is 2.5. We've lived at 4 duty stations in 4 different states and survived 5 deployments. And just in case you don't think I'm awesome yet, I ran my first Marine Corps marathon pregnant while my husband was in Afghanistan. So I feel like that's a little bit, right? So this picture I'd just like to show people because it's my favorite picture of all time. This is my daughter Katie when she was 3, and my husband. On a crazy whim on a Friday in late January, we decided to take a house hunting trip to Norfolk to look at a house I had fallen in love with online. We loved the house and put in an offer the very next day. Katie, our daughter, hadn't been feeling quite like herself for a few weeks. Throughout that day, her status had started to deteriorate. She was having trouble breathing, and she spiked a fever. We decided it was better to be safe than sorry and took what we thought would be a quick trip to the emergency room. One of the first tests they ordered was a chest x-ray. Katie has cancer. Doesn't she look brave in that picture? It's one of my favorite pictures. The beginning was very scary. Katie wasn't responding as well to treatment as she should be. We started to talk about the necessity of a bone marrow transplant if we couldn't get her into remission soon. Joshua, myself, and the other kids were all tested to see if we were a match. The only match was our youngest child, Ellie. 3.5 months into treatment, we got the news we had been waiting for. Katie was in remission. No need for a transplant. On December 28th of 2015, Katie and I made our first once-a-month trip to Richmond. During the regular physical exam at the beginning of the appointment, the nurse practitioner noticed a problem in Katie's eyes. Katie's cancer had returned in the form of leukemic tumors on both of her optic nerves. Our only option now would be a bone marrow transplant. Ellie had to begin her portion of testing as well. Remember when I asked you if you considered yourself to be brave? How brave would you consider a 22-month-old baby girl? This heavy machine gunner had to hold his baby down while they drew 19 vials of blood. The surgery had gone very well. Her baby marrow was so packed full that they were able to get a much higher cell count than they were anticipating. It had taken so long because her body was so tiny, and they had to go into each hole in her pelvis over 100 times. February 3rd, the very next day, was to be Katie's rebirth day. The team assembled, and we watched as Ellie's pure, healthy bone marrow dripped slowly into Katie's central line. We spent the next 6 months living in Richmond, in and out of the hospital, while Katie recovered from the transplant. We just celebrated Katie's 1-year transplant anniversary last week. We now call it Katie Ellie Day. Ellie still really knows nothing of that day, the ones that preceded it or the tumultuous year that followed. And I can't wait for the day when we can really talk about how she saved her sister. During the course of her treatment, Katie and I have spent 113 days in the hospital. We talked about animals and snow. We talked about school and music. We talked about Shopkins and Beanie Boos. We talked about life and death and reincarnation. I know things now. I know things I can't unknow. I know that she wants to die at home in her bed, and I know where she wants her ashes scattered. One of the other things we have talked about is what we're going to do to make a difference. And the answer is advocating and facilitating active duty bone marrow registration. Each year, more than 12,000 people are diagnosed with diseases that require an infusion of stem cells. More than 70% are unable to find an appropriate match within their own family and will require an unrelated donor. There are 7 types of leukemias and lymphomas and 16 types of bone marrow, immune system, and metabolic disorders that require bone marrow transplant. Remember when I asked your ethnicity? A patient's likelihood of finding a matching donor on the registry is estimated to range from 66 to 97%, depending on your ethnic background. Minorities are severely underrepresented on the registry, and the pool of donors of mixed ethnicity is even smaller. Now, just because you raised your hand as Caucasian doesn't mean we don't need you. Katie had a 97% chance of finding a match. Maybe it could have been you. Before I close, I want to take you back to the beginning of my speech. Do you remember this picture? My favorite picture. So we took this one just after Katie's bone marrow transplant. So not everyone has what it takes to be a Marine, but here you all are. You are already the few and the proud, but what if you could also be the match?